Welcome to the Sunset Stories channel. Don't forget to subscribe and share your favorite stories with your friends. Thanks for your support and enjoy watching. Yes, an affair with a fitness trainer is a cliched scenario straight out of a cheap romance novel. But when the deception is exposed by someone with both technical ingenuity and a thirst for vengeance, the banality of the situation immediately morphs in a high-stakes drama. The real essence lies in how he approached revenge with a cold, professional demeanor and unwavering resolve. No excessive emotion, yet 100% effectiveness. It was precisely this IT-savvy method, blending cyber intrusion skills with a knack for handling every detail flawlessly, that turned the most stereotypical trainer affair into a story reminiscent of a chilling thriller. So let's begin our story. Ethan Myers always believed his life was the very picture of suburban contentment. He had a cozy house in the pleasant outskirts of Greenville, a high-paying job managing cybersecurity for a regional tech firm, and a beautiful wife named Lucy who had once been the centerpiece of all his hopes and dreams. Friends and neighbors called them the golden couple, praising their chemistry and apparent closeness. But as with so many well-tended gardens, the appearance of flourishing roses can hide the creeping weeds beneath the surface. When Ethan first met Lucy in college, he thought her smile was enough to light up any room. She was the kind of person who'd leave a trail of laughter wherever she went, making everyone feel included. Their early years together were a whirlwind of late-night conversations, spontaneous road trips, and stolen kisses in library corners. But time changed them in ways neither expected. Once they bought their suburban home, an attractive two-story house with neat hedges and a warm beige exterior, they seemed to settle into comfortable domestic rhythms. Lucy took on a marketing position at a local boutique agency, while Ethan's cybersecurity role steadily advanced. At first, these new chapters only seemed like natural steps toward a stable future. Indeed, for a long stretch, it was everything they wanted. Dinner parties with neighbors, weekend hikes in the nearby national park, daydreams about eventually expanding their family. The house filled with laughter when they invited friends over for barbecues in the backyard, and at bedtime they would talk about everything and nothing at all. Slowly, however, the cracks began to appear. Their conversations became more surface level. Lucy would joke that Ethan lived half his life in the basement, always tinkering with security systems, configuring servers, and running penetration tests for freelance clients. Meanwhile, Ethan teased Lucy for her new preoccupation with dieting and working out. Though these jabs were delivered playfully at first, the affection behind them began to wane. Something intangible hung in the air, as if each harmless remark contained a hidden barb. One day, Lucy announced she had signed up for a premium gym membership to focus on wellness. Ethan didn't think much of it at the time. Plenty of neighbors seemed enthralled by the same fitness craze. But Lucy approached it with the same intense dedication that once fueled her late-night study sessions in college. She spent hours at the gym, religiously discussing new workout routines and fresh protein shake recipes. Ethan, absorbed in his own tasks, never truly noticed how often Lucy was gone, especially in the evenings and over weekends. Yet, it was around this time that Lucy's behavior shifted. She started arriving home later, showering immediately, and often skipping the dinners Ethan had prepared. Their once comfortable evening banter replaced itself with curt small talk about her client meetings or urgent tasks of the office. Ethan told himself not to worry. Lucy had always been ambitious. Maybe she was simply overworking to chase a promotion. But little clues accumulated. Lucy's phone would buzz at odd hours, and she would hurry to swipe away notifications. On weekends, she took business trips for her agency to meet prospective clients in nearby cities. It all sounded plausible enough until the cancellations and rescheduling of their personal time grew too frequent to ignore. As Ethan watched Lucy slip further from him, a quiet dread took root in his mind. He tried to stay calm, to reason with himself. After all, who wouldn't be busy in these times? But on a deeper, more instinctual level, he felt something was very wrong. A sense of betrayal, though still unconfirmed, gnawed at him. One evening, feeling the weight of their distance, Ethan decided they needed a getaway, something that might restore at least a fraction of the warmth they once shared. He suggested a romantic bed and breakfast in the Smoky Mountains, offering rolling hills, crisp mountain air, and a chance to disconnect from work. Lucy listened with polite disinterest, forcing a smile and vaguely promising to check her schedule. Several days later, Ethan received Lucy's text. "So sorry, I got a sudden client presentation this weekend. Rain check." Smiley face. He stared at the message on his phone, unsure whether he felt more heartbreak or anger. This was becoming routine. Lucy's last-minute changes, canceled plans, the phantom client engagements. He tried to quell the resentment building in his chest. Later that same week, Ethan arranged a cozy dinner at home. He carefully searched for recipes online, wanting to recreate the dishes they'd loved in their early years. Crab linguine with garlic bread and a bottle of the same Merlot they'd shared on their first anniversary. He took time setting the table, lighting candles, and even placing fresh garden roses in a vase to recall the warmth of earlier days. Lucy didn't come home until nearly 10 p.m., and when she arrived, she barely glanced at the table. She claimed exhaustion and apologized without conviction, heading straight upstairs to shower. By the time she came back down, the pasta was cold, the candles had burned low, and Ethan had lost the will to bring up how disappointed he was. That night, he lay awake in bed, Lucy sleeping beside him in silence. He stared at the ceiling, recalling the early days of their relationship, the stolen kisses under the starry sky, the spontaneous coffee runs when they would laugh at each other's jokes. What had changed so drastically between them? The question churned inside him with no clear answer, only a deepening sense of dread. At the local fitness center, Lucy worked closely with one of the club's star trainers, Sebastian Tanner. He was tall, lean, and exuded the easy confidence of someone used to admiration. Rumor had it he'd been a professional athlete once, sidelined by an injury, and eventually found a calling as a personal trainer. With a magnetic presence and a penchant for throwing compliments just to see people blush, Sebastian enthralled clients, particularly the women. For Lucy, who had initially joined the gym to stay fit and burn off work stress, Sebastian's specialized attention was flattering. At first, it seemed purely professional. He corrected her posture on the elliptical, increased her weights at just the right pace, and introduced her to advanced training regimens. Yet, their sessions grew longer, peppered with friendly banter and subtle innuendo. Lucy found herself flattered, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a while. She had once been the center of Ethan's world, the subject of his unwavering adoration. But now, as her marriage cooled, she found the attention from Sebastian addictive, like a rush of dopamine she couldn't refuse. In the beginning, Lucy justified everything as harmless flirting. She told herself that a bit of playfulness brightened her day, and Ethan never needed to know. Yet each time she lingered with Sebastian after official gym hours or accepted his offer of protein shakes that somehow morphed into dinner, she crossed a line she didn't fully acknowledge. Gradually, casual intimacy escalated to something more, and Sebastian, ever watchful, sensed Lucy's vulnerability. He thrived on the thrill of pursuit, savoring each glance and suggestive joke. Over time, they exchanged phone numbers for easy workout scheduling. Soon after, those texts evolved into midnight messages filled with jokes, personal confessions, and eventually desire. Before Lucy fully realized it, she had begun an affair, an exhilarating yet guilt-ridden double life. Ethan's doubts had grown too persistent to ignore. He observed how Lucy became secretive with her phone, never letting it out of sight, turning the screen away whenever he was near. He noticed how her business trips often clashed with weekends he had suggested for personal outings. Although Lucy insisted it was purely professional, Ethan suspected otherwise. In desperation, Ethan confided in Kelsey, a mutual friend who sometimes took the same Pilates class as Lucy. She's been really close to that trainer, Sebastian, Kelsey admitted reluctantly. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but something about how they interact seemed beyond normal client-trainer boundaries. Ethan felt a rock settle in his stomach. He told himself that this was Lucy, the woman he had known for years. She wouldn't do this to him, would she? But the evidence mounted. In a final attempt at salvaging their relationship, he planned a surprise getaway to a spa resort upstate, near rolling vineyards and hot springs. It was the perfect venue to reconnect. He took care of all the arrangements, hotel reservations, dinner with local organic produce, even a couple's massage he thought Lucy might appreciate. One Friday morning, with uncharacteristic enthusiasm, he revealed his plan. Lucy's face looked pained as she informed him she'd have to travel for work that very weekend. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, avoiding his gaze. "I promise we'll find time. Maybe next month." The next day, Ethan noticed Lucy had left a business card from her marketing agency behind, though it was supposedly the reason for her trip. A sense of déjà vu overwhelmed him, like he'd heard the same excuses, the same promises, over and over. That weekend, Lucy left in her car with a small suitcase, presumably heading to some corporate retreat. On a hunch, Ethan decided to call Lucy's colleague, Carla, a junior agent in Lucy's department. Carla sounded confused by Ethan's questions, eventually confessing she didn't know of any weekend meeting or project that required Lucy's presence out of town. Carla even apologized for not having more information. Ethan put the phone down, feeling equal parts heartbreak and fury. Late that same weekend, Ethan was pruning a hedge along his front yard when his neighbor, Cheryl, approached from the sidewalk. She hesitated, eyes filled with sympathy. "Ethan, I'm not sure if I should tell you this," she began softly, "but my sister saw Lucy at Silver Lake Resort yesterday. And she wasn't alone. Cheryl's sister was on a day trip with friends and noticed Lucy with a man at the resort's upscale restaurant, sharing a bottle of wine and, at one point, even holding hands across the table." Cheryl swallowed. "I didn't know how to tell you, but I have photos. My sister snapped a few because she wasn't sure if it was Lucy." Ethan felt like the ground was giving out beneath him, but he forced composure. He thanked Cheryl, stared at the photos on her phone. Lucy in a flowy dress, leaning across a table to smile at Sebastian. The gestures were undeniably intimate. That night, Ethan barely slept, plagued by conflicting emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal. The visual proof shattered the flimsy trust he'd been clinging to. Guilt gnawed at him, too. Had he contributed to this by withdrawing emotionally into his digital realm of servers and code? Or was Lucy simply the kind of person who would cheat when life became too routine? He wrestled with those thoughts until dawn. When Monday arrived, Lucy strolled in, suitcase in hand, wearing the polished mask of someone returning from a legitimate business trip. Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders as he merely nodded at her greeting and retreated into his office. She must have known something was off, but neither of them spoke. Ethan's professional skill set granted him a unique advantage. He was an expert in cybersecurity, trained to detect infiltration attempts, patch vulnerabilities, and decode suspicious traffic. That Monday evening, with emotions swirling into a storm, he decided to do the unthinkable. He would hack Lucy's cloud accounts, messaging apps, anything he could access. Part of him detested the idea. It was a moral breach, a violation of privacy. But another part, the wounded spouse bent on knowing the truth, pushed aside such qualms. If Lucy was being dishonest, Ethan convinced himself he had a right to confirm it. Night fell, and Lucy was upstairs, presumably preparing for another day at work. Meanwhile, Ethan ensconced himself in the basement, the hum of his multiple screens a strange comfort. He opened a secured workstation, fired up infiltration tools, and meticulously tried to brute force or exploit known vulnerabilities in Lucy's accounts. After hours of digital maneuvers, Ethan cracked it. Her email, her cloud storage, small fortresses easily scalable by a man with enough skill and heartbreak-fueled determination. The trove of data he found was more damning than he could have imagined. There were messages, Lucy gushing to Sebastian about the incredible dinner they shared, about how thrilling it was to risk so much just to feel alive. Photos from their weekend rendezvous. Even more explicit images Lucy had apparently sent him in private. Ethan felt his stomach churn with every new revelation. This was no mere flirtation. They were intimately involved, and it was all laid out in black and white. Lucy praising Sebastian for making her feel wanted, Sebastian urging her to ditch the old life, or at least ignore it for a while. A swirl of half-jokes, confessions, and stolen passion. A single question stabbed Ethan's mind. How long had she felt this bored or unhappy with him? He scrolled through months of messages, piecing together the timeline. Their fling had deepened over the past few months, but emotional cracks had been present even earlier. By the time Ethan finished scanning everything, the sun was inching over the horizon. He stared at the screens, hands trembling with a volatile mix of rage and heartbreak. They had turned his life into a farce, sneaking around, mocking the vows he had cherished. Something inside Ethan turned cold, a steely resolve forming. Beneath his anguish, Ethan nurtured a grim determination to make them pay. He knew Sebastian's livelihood depended on his standing at the gym, on positive referrals and new clients. Lucy's entire image, both personally and at her boutique agency, hinged on her perceived trustworthiness, her professional composure, and a stable marriage that fit the success story narrative so many marketing firms prized. But the seed of Ethan's wrath was deeper than that. He felt robbed of time, affection, the promise of a future that was supposed to include Lucy by his side. They had planned to start a family. They had joked about adopting a dog. All illusions, it seemed. In the quiet of dawn, he formulated a plan. He wouldn't just confront Lucy and Sebastian with the evidence. That would be too direct and risk Lucy spinning some sympathetic story to save face. No, he wanted a more dramatic unveiling, something that would shock them into realizing the magnitude of their betrayal. Though morally questionable, Ethan's next steps felt justified to him in the haze of heartbreak. Sebastian typically ran his morning classes around 7 a.m. The club opened early, catering to the rise and grind crowd. On a Wednesday morning, Ethan slipped into the building at 6:45, unnoticed among the wave of regulars scanning their passes. He wasn't dressed to work out. He wore casual clothes and carried a plain folder. In the locker room, he pinned up large printouts, photos of Lucy and Sebastian from that weekend, some showing them kissing, others in each other's arms. They were intimate enough to leave little doubt as to the nature of their relationship, but not graphic to the point of immediate censorship. Ethan taped them to the bulletin board reserved for announcements about yoga classes and promotional events. At the top, he wrote in bold, black letters, "Traitors exposed." A hush fell across the locker room as early arriving gym members stumbled upon the display. Phone cameras emerged, capturing the scandal. By the time Sebastian made his entrance, the tension was palpable. People parted to let him see the board. His face lost all color. He recognized Lucy's face, recognized himself in the photos. At first, he swore under his breath, then tried to rip down the pictures. But the damage was done. People were whispering and recording him with their phones, raising eyebrows in shock or amusement. A gym manager, alerted by staff, rushed over. With a stern expression, she declared that any personal relationships with clients violated the gym's code of ethics. This was the last straw. Sebastian, once a prize trainer, was promptly dismissed. Furious, he argued, but the manager pointed at the humiliating evidence. Soon, the gym's human resources rep arrived, demanding that Sebastian clear out his locker immediately. Ethan, standing nearby, watched the chaotic scene with arms folded. He felt a twisted sense of vindication. Sebastian's career was in flames, And that was just the beginning. Lucy arrived at the gym 20 minutes later, presumably for a session with Sebastian. She found the staff and crowd still abuzz. The moment she saw the pictures and realized what had happened, her face went ashen with fear. People recognized her from the photos. Some gasped, others snickered. Someone filmed her reaction. She tried in vain to tear the pictures down, but multiple copies had already circulated as patrons had snapped photos on their phones. The gym's manager pulled Lucy aside, chastising her for creating such a scandal. While Lucy wasn't an employee, her presence was clearly unwelcome now that the entire membership had witnessed her affair displayed on a public board. Feeling cornered, Lucy rushed out of the building, ignoring the inquisitive stares and hushed voices that trailed behind her. She hoped to find Ethan at home, to beg for an explanation, an apology, anything. But when she arrived, she found her belongings scattered across their front lawn. A suitcase had been tossed open, shoes and clothes strewn across the grass, exposing them to the neighborhood's gaze. A large sign on the front door read, "Locks changed, do not enter." Tears welled in Lucy's eyes as she realized that not only had Ethan discovered her infidelity, but he was done with her, intent on erasing her from his life. She pounded on the door, calling his name, but silence answered. A few curious neighbors peered from behind curtains, watching the spectacle unfold. In despair, Lucy tried calling Sebastian for support, but he only spat curses into the phone, blaming her for ruining his reputation and costing him a job that had taken him years to build. "Don't call me again," he barked before hanging up. Lucy stood there, drenched in tears, feeling the weight of how drastically her life had shifted in less than 24 hours. The rest of that bleak day passed in a blur for Lucy. She found a budget motel on the edge of town and checked in under her own credit card, funds limited. That evening, she finally summoned the courage to read a message from Ethan's lawyer, a formal notice invoking the prenuptial agreement they had signed years ago. Back when Lucy and Ethan got engaged, Ethan's father, an old-fashioned businessman, had insisted on a clause that forfeited the cheating spouse's claims to joint assets. Lucy, so confident in her fidelity at the time, signed with a dismissive laugh. Now, that clause hovered over her like an executioner's blade. The lawyer's message was painfully clear. Given the documented evidence of Mrs. Meyer's infidelity, our client is seeking immediate enforcement of the marital agreement. Mrs. Myers is entitled to only her personal belongings and no portion of the marital estate. Stunned, Lucy realized she might lose the house, the shared savings, even her car if it was registered under Ethan's name. A flurry of calls to potential attorneys yielded the same result. Yes, it was possible to fight a prenup under certain conditions, but the photographic and digital evidence of infidelity was overwhelming. The chances of success were abysmally low, and going to trial would be expensive, something Lucy, who had just lost financial support, could scarcely afford. She tried emailing Ethan, pleading for understanding. "We had something real once. Please, can we talk about a fair arrangement at least?" But her inbox stayed empty. She knew Ethan possessed volumes of incriminating data, emails, photos, messages, enough to bury her in any court proceeding. Her heartbreak tinged with an awful realization. She had underestimated how deeply Ethan's quiet, tech-savvy nature could morph into something vengeful and relentless. For the next few days, Lucy scrambled to salvage what she could. She returned to the suburban home to retrieve personal items, but she found everything she owned locked away or dumped unceremoniously in the garage. The shiny wedding pictures that once adorned their living room walls were gone, likely discarded. She discovered some of her clothes sprayed with paint, her designer heels cut to ribbons, a chilling sign of how merciless Ethan's anger had become. At the boutique agency where Lucy worked, gossip had already filtered in through social media and local chatter. Her boss, worried about the firm's reputation, asked her to take an unpaid leave of absence until the scandal blew over. Some colleagues openly distanced themselves, not wanting to be tainted by association. Meanwhile, Sebastian was left jobless and publicly shamed. The videos of his meltdown at the gym circulated online, mocking him as the cheating trainer who got caught. He tried to relocate to a different gym network, but word traveled quickly in the close-knit fitness community. Prospective employers were hesitant to hire someone embroiled in such a notorious affair. In a small city like Greenville, reputations and rumors carried tremendous weight. The story of Ethan's revenge dominated local gossip for weeks. People's opinions were split. Some thought Ethan had gone too far, branding him cruel. Others applauded him, claiming Lucy and Sebastian got exactly what they deserved. Within a month, Lucy realized her finances were in free fall. She could barely afford the motel. She managed to lease a cramped studio apartment with questionable neighbors, using what little credit she had left. Alone, under flickering fluorescent lights, she spent nights replaying memories in her mind, how she and Ethan had once slow danced in their living room, planning future children's names. Now, everything was stripped away, replaced by guilt and the stinging shame of public exposure. Desperation drove Lucy to try one last conversation with Ethan. She waited outside his office building, clutching a folder of legal documents that indicated she was willing to forfeit almost everything just to finalize the divorce quietly. If he would only let her walk away with a modicum of dignity, they could both move on. When Ethan emerged, he was deep in conversation with a coworker. At the sight of Lucy, he stopped short and murmured something to his colleague, who then departed. Lucy saw only coldness in Ethan's eyes. "Ethan, please," she began, voice trembling. "I know you hate me. I understand I messed up, but can we just settle this without a court battle? I have nothing left." He let out a bitter laugh. "You think I want more drama? I don't care anymore, Lucy. I'll sign the papers, enforce the prenup, and be done. As far as I'm concerned, you and I ceased to exist the minute I found your pictures." She fought back tears. "I never meant to hurt you like this." Ethan shook his head. "You should have thought of that before you brought Sebastian into our lives. But hey, now you're free. Isn't that what you wanted?" Lucy's eyes brimmed with tears. "I didn't want any of this. I am sorry." He gave a curt nod, then brushed past her. It was the final goodbye they never thought they'd have. In the ensuing months, the dust settled over Greenville. People found new topics to gossip about, new local scandals to devour. Ethan channeled his energy into his cybersecurity work, earning a promotion and traveling to conferences where he presented specialized lectures on data protection. A small irony, given how he had violated Lucy's privacy to expose her betrayal. Eventually, the legal formalities concluded. Lucy walked away with just a fraction of what she had once taken for granted. A few clothes, her personal effects, a modest severance from her employer, and a battered sense of self. She tried to pick up freelance marketing work wherever she could, but prospective clients were wary, especially if they recognized her name from the gossip circuit. Sebastian left Greenville altogether, rumors suggesting he'd moved to another state to start fresh. Some said he'd landed a new personal training job under a different name, hoping to outrun the humiliating scandal. Lucy, haunted by regrets, spent quiet evenings in her tiny apartment reflecting on her once enviable life. Before everything collapsed, she had a good job, a loving husband, the promise of a tranquil future. She threw it all away for excitement that she couldn't sustain. The cost was everything she had once held dear. Even on nights when the loneliness felt suffocating, Lucy forced herself to contemplate the consequences of her choices. She recognized how easily small resentments, unspoken disappointments, and new temptations could turn a marriage's gentle tide into a destructive undertow. As for Ethan, though he'd emerged victorious by material standards, he bore emotional scars that wouldn't simply vanish. On occasional sleepless nights, he wondered if he had gone too far, if vengeance had exacted a heavier toll on his own ability to trust and open his heart again. But with time, he hoped, maybe he would heal. Life carried on in Greenville, the suburbs returning to routine. The air warmed each spring, the hedges in front yards blossomed, and families barbecued on weekends. Nobody could see the ghosts that lingered in Ethan's and Lucy's minds. They each had to navigate a landscape radically different from the one they'd planned when they first fell in love. Word occasionally traveled. Lucy might have found a stable marketing gig in a nearby town, or Ethan might have begun dating again. But those details remained fuzzy rumors at best. The truth was that two people who had once promised each other forever were now strangers living separate lives. And somewhere in the shadows of memory, that moment of discovery, the hacked accounts, the damning photos, the scandalous posters at the gym, remained an unerasable testament to how swiftly love can break under the weight of betrayal, and how brutal the thirst for revenge can become when trust lies in ruins. Ultimately, the story of Ethan and Lucy was a cautionary tale for the comfortable suburbs of Greenville, a reminder that beneath the manicured lawns and well-painted fences, relationships can harbor secrets strong enough to tear down everything in their path. That's the end of our story. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. Your feedback means a lot to us.